Hi guys, sorry for the small delay. I am here with Arez to do their introduction to Fire Emblem Romhacks. I will leave the rest to you.
Alrighty. Hello, everyone. My name is Lorez, and welcome to the introduction to Fire Emblem Romhacks panel here at EmblemCon 2025. Like many big franchises, Fire Emblem has a big ROM hacking scene, and it's had one for well over a decade now. If you're like me, and you just can't get enough of the series by only playing the official titles, then hopefully this will be a helpful little guide for you. But first, a little bit about myself. I'm coming at you as someone who is primarily a video creator and someone who likes playing hacks. I haven't actually done a whole lot of hacking myself, just a couple small projects. The reason I'm your host and not a more experienced hacker is that people consider me one of the best presenters in the ROM hacking community. So even though I've only been in this community for 3 short years, they've allowed me to be the one to introduce their community to you all, which I'm very grateful for. It's also my first time presenting a panel here at EmblemCon, and I'm very happy to be here. But as for what I'm actually here to present, I'm here to tell you about how the FE ROM hacking scene started, show you some of the coolest hacks that were released just last year, and let you know where you can go to explore any hack your heart desires. One thing I'm not really going to be doing, however, is talking about rebalances. These are games that take existing Fire Emblem campaigns and shake them up a bit while still keeping the story and characters intact. Think Project Ember for FE6 or Sacred Stones Reforged for FE8, games like that. Those games are awesome in their own right, they're just not the focus of this panel. What I'm focusing on is the full custom campaigns that ROM hackers have made, with brand new stories, maps, characters, the whole shebang. So with that out of the way, let's kick things off from the very start. If a Fire Emblem fan is going to be familiar with any ROM hack, it's probably going to be The Last Promise by Blazer. With its final release being in 2013, it is the oldest fully custom Fire Emblem fan game. There were other modifications that existed before The Last Promise, mostly cosmetic changes to FE7, but TLP revolutionized what it means to be a Fire Emblem ROM hack. With a fully custom story, unique characters, and a fresh set of maps to play through, the things this game was doing were unheard of at the time, and they set the standard for what a Fire Emblem ROM hack should look like. It even has a fully playable postgame, something that's pretty rare even nowadays. The gameplay is a little bit slow and grindy compared to the faster tempo of a lot more modern hacks. Really, it plays a lot like Path of Radiance or Radiant Dawn, because guess what? Those were the most recent Fire Emblem games at the time it was being developed. That's right, most of the beta builds of The Last Promise predate Fire Emblem Awakening, and the very first public build of TLP even predates Shadow Dragon. Well, the US version anyway. So, even though the gameplay of TLP isn't really my thing, I still think there's a lot of reasons to like this game. The story is pretty cheesy, but also really fun. You can tell Blazer wrote this story as a high schooler, and I mean that in the best possible way. The game's art style also holds up quite well. I really like the dark menu boxes with the gold trim. It looks super cool. The game really is just dripping with charm, so especially if you're interested in seeing where Fire Emblem ROM hacks got their start, it's definitely worth your time to check out. That said, there are definitely cracks that show the age of TLP's campaign, and not just in the writing. The Last Promise was built on top of Fire Emblem 7, and if you've played both games, you can really tell that one is painted over the other. TLP has a stretch of about 10 chapters that all happen before a time skip, and that's very clearly a recontextualized Lin mode, and there's a character in a tent that represents your convoy, and that's very clearly Merlinus. Tons of tiny things like these were too tough to remove back during those days, so they were kept in. It won't ruin your experience by any means, but it will occasionally remind you that you're playing a weird, messed up version of FE7. And that kind of sets the stage for the first wave of Fire Emblem ROM hacks, which I'm going to say happens from around 2012 to 2017. FE7 was used as the base for all the fan works that reached completion during this time, and using FE7 as the base for your game definitely has some annoyances, especially with Merlinus, as he was really hard to dislodge completely from the game. However, all the how to make a hack guides assumed you were using FE7 at the time, and all the greatest coding wizards of the community understood FE7's eventing system way better than they understood FE8's. A lot of hacks during this time also stylistically take a lot of notes from Tellius, just like The Last Promise does. Requiem, Order of the Crimson Arm, and The Road to Ruin are all games that were released during this time, and all names that some of you in the audience will be familiar with. These are all FE7 hacks that have had about a decade to circulate by word of mouth, so they all have their own followings, but if you look at all of them, you'll see a fair amount of commonalities. Having a lower class mercenary lord was pretty common at this time. The games also tend to shy away from fancier staves like Warp or Rescue, and enemies also tend to be on the bulkier side, especially in late game. One thing you'll also notice about this period is that the list of hacks is pretty shallow. It'll depend on how strict your criteria is and when exactly you decide to put your cutoff, of course, but I'd say there's a little less than 10 custom campaigns completed during this time. Hacking is hard, especially back then when people knew way less about the game they were hacking and didn't have the tools or the resources of a well established community. If you wanted a custom battle animation, for example, you or someone you know had to be willing to spend days editing that animation by hand. Plus, when you were inserting it, you needed to make sure all the frames lasted for exactly the right amount of time. It was a real pain. So, it's no wonder that custom animations are also a pretty big rarity during this period, usually reserved for the main character and the final boss. This all started to change in 2017 when the community pivoted to FE8. A few people tried to latch on to FE8 before then, but it never quite stuck. Things like the world map being hard to get around made people hesitant to make the switch, and hackers just generally did not have a good reason to move away from the game they were familiar with, and so they just assumed the cap on things you could do in FE8 was pretty close to the cap on things you could do in FE7. This all changed with the hacker Circles Everywhere, who led a push for FE8 backed by their system for creating custom skills, fittingly titled Skill Systems. Being able to create your own custom skills is obviously a big draw for anyone who wants to make their own Fire Emblem game, and Circles proved how cool it was with their great big community project that very same year, Void's Blitzar Adventure. This is what's called a community blitz hack, which was a hacking format popular in the late 2010s where a bunch of hackers would come together and release an entire full-length project over the course of 1 week. The end product was not that fun, honestly, but the experience of making it was really cool. And in this case, it allowed a lot of hackers to hop on the project, mess around with FE8, mess around with skill systems, create a map, create a character, and hop on out of there. It was a fantastic way to get the community properly introduced to the flow of FE8 hacking, but the final, and probably the largest change that happened in 2017 is the creation of the hacking tool FE Builder by the hacker 7743. It is honestly pretty hard to overstate just how useful FE Builder is as a tool if you want to make wrong hacks. Making maps, placing enemies, inserting music, just about anything you can think of that would go into a GBA Fire Emblem game is something that you can do with Builder. And unlike just about every other hacking format, you don't need to know a lick of code to do it. A 15-minute YouTube video showing you the very basics, and you can just get off to the races. Frankly, other fan bases wish they had a tool as good as Builder. However, making a full custom campaign still takes tons of time and effort. So even though Builder released in 2017, we didn't see the first big wave of hacks made entirely in Builder until a couple years later. 2019 gave us Justice and Pride by Dr. Green, and 2020 gave us a lot of big hacks. First off, we have Four Kings by Crash Boom Bang and Vision Quest by Pondon. Those were some of the largest hacks of that year, and both of them were created by people who had zero programming knowledge. They were just Fire Emblem fans that downloaded FE Builder and learned as they went. Vision Quest in particular really feels like a sleeker version of those old FE7 hacks, Tellius vibes and all, while Four Kings takes things in a different direction, modeling its own campaign more after FE6. But the other really big project to come out of 2020, Sun God's Wrath, was quite the opposite. The creator of that game, Blade Master, was one of the earliest believers in FE8 as an engine, and started making his hack at the time that TLP was still in development, way before FE Builder was even created. That said, even experienced hackers like Blade Master can still get a lot of use out of Builder. he ended up using it to help import things like battle animations. Speaking of, one of the other really big changes from the old FE7 hack days is now there's a big old asset repository where hackers and artists can submit their creations for anyone to use. This will be easier if I show you some examples. So I'm going to show off some of the free-to-use works of one of my favorite ROM hack artists, Laurette Lacroix. They did a lot of work making the character portraits in Vision Quest, but their free-to-use stuff has a ton of portraits that are perfect for single chapter bosses. So if you want a new portrait for your chapter 3 boss, but you don't know how to make portraits yourself, you can just drop one of these guys in your game, drop Laurette Lacroix's name in the credits, and you're good to go. And it's not just portraits, it's also songs, backgrounds, menu graphics, battle animations, so many things that people have collectively spent countless hours creating, available for anyone to use when making their ROM hack. And with the really high availability of tools like these, the amount of hacks being released every year has shot through the roof. I said about 10 hacks got released during the FE7 era. Now you can expect at least 10 hacks every year, probably way more. Of course, I can't do every single one of the hundreds of hacks out there justice in this single presentation, so I'm just going to highlight the 3 most popular hacks of 2024 so you can get an idea of the kinds of things that are happening in the ROM hacking scene right now. I'm going to start things off with Dream of 5 by Parrhesia and LuminescentBlade. And Dream of 5 actually has quite a fitting history for this presentation. It actually also started back in 2011 as an FE7 hack, a contemporary of The Last Promise. But after being worked on for about 3 years, the hack faced a lot of setbacks due to the fiddly nature of those ancient FE7 hacking tools and ended up being abandoned. But in 2023, with the help of FE Builder and the switch to the FE8 engine, the original creators revived the project and were able to release the completed version just a year later in 2024. In it, you play as Rena, a squad captain who gets caught up in a conspiracy to overthrow the ruler of her own country. The game is about 30 chapters long, with a route split in the mid-game depending on your choices in the story. Dream of 5 shows some of the best visuals that the ROM hacking community is capable of on the GBA. The character portraits, the map palettes, and the menu graphics are all gorgeous. It even has the largest selection of special cutscene graphics, or CGs, of any ROM hack out right now, with about a dozen or so sprinkled throughout the campaign. In terms of gameplay, it still has that FE7 hack flair, forgoing skill systems for just good old-fashioned GBA Fire Emblem gameplay. That said, I think the enemy design is a lot more modern than your TLP-era hacks. Enemies hit harder and are more accurate, but they also scale much better into the late game. While earlier ROM hacks might have some pretty big difficulty spikes, especially around endgame, Dream of 5 has a really smooth difficulty curve overall. It also just has a fantastic story. I can't go too into detail about it without risking spoilers, but Rena is a captivating main character, and it's very fun to watch her grow and change through all the twists and turns the story will throw at her. Actually, to highlight some of the strengths of these games, I figure I'll tell you about my personal favorite side character from each of these hacks, so you kind of get a peek at the main appeal of each game without me needing to dive into spoiler territory. And for Dream of 5, my pick has to be Gabriel. Gabriel is a dark mage that you get in the early game, right before the route split. He plays a lot like Kanas from FE7, with big magic but iffy speed, and of course dark magic always gets the coolest tomes in these games. Personality-wise, he's a bit of a con man, a snake oil salesman, and he only joins your army because he got chased out of the last town, but he wants to believe that his intellect and magical talent can provide some actual value to people. He has some of the best support conversations in the game, in my opinion, where you get to see this side of him that's this slimy trickster that loves taking advantage of people, conflict with the side of him that's actually lonely and wants to make genuine friends. What really completes his character is that when he promotes, his portrait changes, and he puts on this big, corny top hat that makes him look like a stage magician. It's so awesome. Next up is The Morrow's Golden Country by Retina. This one actually is not a hack from FE Builder. It still uses the older methods of making hacks, which are still alive and well, And in fact, TMGC really flexes its technical muscle the most out of these three. And it has some of the coolest eventing I've ever seen in a fan game. And a lot of this game's eventing surrounds its completely unique support system. If you're big into Fire Emblem because you love reading all the supports between all the side characters, you definitely want this hack on your radar. TMGC takes a note from the support systems of the more modern Fire Emblem entries by making it so that you read the supports between battles and not during the battles, which is what a GBA Fire Emblem game would normally do. This creates a nice little game flow of going through the battles of the game, where you're kind of thinking on your feet and adapting to what the game is throwing at you. Then once the battle is done, you can unwind a bit and read like 3 or 4 supports while you're getting ready for the next one. As for the main story, you follow Blair, a minor lord of Dalst, whose family name is in disgrace. So now she needs to go on a quest to redeem herself and unfold the mystery of a dark cult that seems to be watching her every move. Every once in a while during the story, you'll get to these special interlude chapters, which don't have any enemies and just let you walk around as Blair and check in with your party members and buy items and whatnot. It's pretty charming, honestly, and TMGC once again shows off some of its really cool coding by letting you actually walk around as Blair with the arrow keys instead of the normal way you control FE units. It's super cute. It's also one of the few GBA hacks that has fully implemented combat arts, which is pretty cool. Instead of relying on blind luck to see if you get an adept or a Luna activation to kill some enemy, you can select that command from a menu, and at the cost of a little extra weapon durability, get that kill every time. It's a super useful mechanic, and it's definitely saved me from resetting quite a few times. My side character of choice for this game has to be Peggy. She's a cleric with really high magic and pretty bad speed. I'm starting to notice a pattern here, but she really rocks. Her unique skill is Swarp, which is a combination of swap and warp. It makes her and her target switch places on the map, and its range depends on her magic, which, like I said before, is really big. It's super fun watching her zip across the map, getting your best combat unit into the front lines, or moving your dancer from one side of the army to the other. It's so cool. As for how Peggy is as a character, she's not your typical timid cleric type. In fact, she's quite the opposite. She's very loud-mouthed and aggressive. It makes her really fun to watch when she's bouncing off of your more polite or straightforward characters like Butch or Athena. Plus, it contextualizes some of her other tools in gameplay, like her provoke skill, and the fact that she can bonk people with one of her staves. A really fun character all around, and definitely a big highlight of the Morrow's Golden Country for me. Our third and final hack we'll be covering in this panel is Cerulean Crescent by Rivian. This hack is for our gameplay gremlins in the audience, and buddy, that includes me. I love this hack, but I don't want to get too ahead of myself all at once, so I'll give you a rundown of the story and the features. In Cerulean Crescent, you follow the story of Ellery, a bureaucrat from the mainland that got exiled after being caught on the wrong side of a power struggle. Now she's trying to make ends meet as an adventurer on the outskirts of civilization, while she plots her triumphant return to the mainland. Ellery is infectious to watch, and you'll get to see a lot of her because just like TMGC, this game also has interludes, although there's a little twist on them. Because you are these adventurers on the outskirts of civilization here, you can interact with people on the Crescent in 2 main ways: accept their quests or fall for their scams. Quests are what they sound like. Someone in an interlude will ask you to accomplish some side task while you're in the regular maps, and if you accept it and complete their task, they'll give you a reward the next time you see them. These are just a cute little way to spice up the maps and get you invested in some of just the regular people in the game's world. The scams are a little more interesting. Would you give up 4K gold for a legendary, powerful sword? It looks decent. Magical. 1 to 2 range. Only 20 uses, though. Do you have any sword users that can use this thing? Life is hard out here on the Crescent, and the people out here are more than happy to part with some special adventuring gear if they can make a quick buck. So, every interlude, there will be a handful of characters that will offer you a special deal for some unique item or another. You won't be able to get it from an armory, that's for sure. These add so much flavor to Cerulean Crescent. I absolutely adore them. And they definitely add to the lighthearted tone of Cerulean Crescent as well. I will say, I think this is the funniest hack of all the ones that I've talked about so far. Dream of Five and TMGC also have their fair share of jokes, and they've both gotten a couple chuckles out of me, but it was like every chapter with Cerulean Crescent. This hack is hilarious. All right, before I get too carried away with all that, I should move on to my choice side character of Cerulean Crescent. And here, that's gotta be Lindros. Lindros is a mage with, you guessed it, high magic and bad speed. But as I said, Cerulean Crescent was the big gameplay gremlin hack, so I'm going to talk about the skill he's built around, Lunge. Lunge is a skill that's in the vanilla Fire Emblem games, of course. After you attack, you switch places with an enemy. But what makes Lindros' Lunge special is that when you lunge with his special long-range tome, Guidance, he gets a whole nother action. This opens up a whole new dimension for Lindros. Normally, teleporting a fragile mage into a clump of enemies is a bad idea. But here he gets another action, so he can switch places with one enemy, kill another enemy, and usually survive one attack after that. So he's pretty versatile. When you're looking at a clump of 3 enemies, you're thinking, okay, which one does Lindros lunge, and which one does he kill? And since Guidance has 3 to 10 range, where do you want the enemy that he lunges to end up? These are the kinds of questions you're asking every turn when you use Lindros, and so many characters in the Cerulean Crescent are like this. They really get the gears turning. He's an awesome character in an awesome game. And that is a look at where the ROM hacking community is right now. Although, I haven't really told you where the ROM hacking community is right now. If you wanted to actually go and play these hacks, or try making one of your own, feuniverse.us is the place to be. It's a forum website that's been the most active FE ROM hacking website for about 10 years now, and it hosts about 99% of all ROM hacks, as well as important ROM hacking resources like skill systems, FE Builder, and a ton of hacking tutorials. FE Universe doesn't let you share ROMs, however, so to actually play a ROM hack, you need to acquire a ROM from somewhere else, download the patch for the hack you want to play, and then apply the patch to the ROM. The Fire Emblem YouTuber Mecha has a little video tutorial on how to do this on his channel. It's like 2 minutes long. Applying a patch is not hard. He uses the program NUPS, and so do I. But fun fact, FE Builder can also patch your ROM for you. Builder's the best. And if you want to explore some other ROM hacks that I didn't talk about this panel, the ROM hacking community actually hosts a yearly event showing off all of their new and upcoming projects. It's called FEE3, and it's hosted every fall on the FE Universe YouTube channel. Last FEE3 had about 60 entrants, so you've got quite a big selection to choose from. You can just click around that YouTube channel and check out any hack that might catch your interest. You might even see me hosting a couple of those videos, and I'll probably host a few this year's FE3 as well. And yeah, we did outlast the actual E3 that the event is named after. And we're still going strong. It's awesome. That said, last year, Builder received its final official update, and the creator of FE Builder, 7743, retired from the ROM hacking community. So now, a lot of us are wondering, what is the future of our hobby going to look like? Oop. No. There it is. Well, I think FE Builder will still make FE8 by far and away the most popular game in the series to hack, even without updates, but there are other platforms that hold some promise for the future of Fire Emblem fan games. If there's any other Fire Emblem game that has the potential to have a really big hacking scene, I think it would be Fire Emblem Fates. Fates has a lot of things going for it, namely a lot of its mechanics like reclassing and pair-up are pretty popular with a lot of Fire Emblem fans, but are hard or impossible to implement in the GBA engine. But to the best of my knowledge, there are no custom campaigns out for the 3DS games yet, although I believe there are a couple rebalances. But modifying a base game isn't the only option if you want to make a Fire Emblem fan game. In fact, there's now a couple of fully custom game engines that people have made that specialize in creating Fire Emblem fan games. The most popular one of these is Lex Talionis, which I think has about 10 complete games at the moment. The user base of LT is comparatively small, but it's another perfectly valid option for hackers who cannot be contained by the Nintendo Game Boy Advance. And with that, that is the state of ROM hacking in 2025. A lot of passionate fans are creating amazing games that you can play completely for free. We've come a long way since the days of TLP, and we aren't showing any signs of stopping. Thank you all so much for coming, and I hope you came away with a couple cool new games you want to check out. As for me, I'm perfectly happy just seeing where the ROM hack community is going to go. I love the FE8 engine, so even though it might be nice to play a game on the 3DS or Lex Talionis every once in a while, sometimes I just want to settle down with a nice simple game that takes that engine and makes something cool out of it. So I'm looking forward to what the future of FE8 hacking has in store and what fantastic stories this awesome community is capable of creating. I want to give a big thank you to the FE Universe community for helping me research this thing, and I've got my socials listed right there if you want to follow me. I'll be posting a recording of this panel to my YouTube channel in case you missed part of it. And you'll find some of my other videos about Fire Emblem topics that interest me while you're there. But that's all for me. As always, I've been LowRes. Thank you all so much for showing up, and I hope you enjoy the rest of EmblemCon.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Very quickly before we end the stream, I'll see you guys in 30 minutes, but in the meantime, feel free to check out everything else we got going on in the Discord server, Artist Alley, Exhibitors Hall, Commissioner's Corridor, etc. And if you have the spare funds, of course, as we always have, we have our raffle going on for donations for direct relief. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you soon.